Hello and welcome to Transformation Now. Hi, I'm Rita Rocker with SoaringHigher.rocks, and my heart is to really help people in their personal as well as professional lives. So today what I'd like to talk with you about is presenting yourself to 1 or 1,000. You know, a lot of times we think presentation skills, our communication skills only apply in business or possibly to a room full or an auditorium full of people. But presentation skills even apply to just one person that we might be talking to. It could be a child, it could be a teacher, a coach, it could be the president of a company. Whatever the case may be, we are presenting ourselves, our ideas, our products, our services, our thoughts to that person. So as I was giving this message to a group at an empowerment breakfast last week, I said, you know, this is a two-way street because you are sitting there watching and listening to me. But while you're doing that, I'm actually watching you because I'm taking in your body language, your attention, and things like that. So many times we don't really maybe pay that much attention to how a person is silently responding. So I'll talk about that a little bit. So it's just presenting yourself and your ideas to anyone at any time, day or night, whether it's personal or professional. And so a lot of it depends on our perception, first of all, of ourselves and how we think other people are perceiving us. So basically that means how we see ourselves and how we believe others see us affects everything we do. If we have poor self-perception, then that will oftentimes hinder us from going ahead, going forward, succeeding, because maybe we don't feel like we're worth it or we're valuable enough, something like that. And so if we think someone perceives us in a negative light, that can often put a damper on what we're doing or how we're feeling. And so want to think about that. Always perceive ourselves as, you know, we're God's kids. We're very strong, we're powerful, and we're smart. God gave us a mind. And so always think of that and stop and check yourself, in a sense. How are you perceiving yourself? What do you see yourself to be? Because a lot of times we need to make some adjustments in that. So how does one's own perception have to do with what's happening, how we communicate, if we're drawing people in, if we're pushing them away, if they're supporting us, if they're not supporting us? And so sometimes we think, well, if I present my thoughts or my ideas, you know, my solutions requests, am I going to mess up? Am I going to be rejected? Am I going to be judged? Will people look at me like a deer in the headlight, like I don't know what I'm talking about? And so again, how we perceive ourselves is going to affect if we're bold enough to get out there and make a statement or not. And so sometimes too, we need to set boundaries. Always think when something's going on, how do you feel? How do you feel inside? Do you feel confident? Do you feel like you're cared about, valued? Or do you feel just the opposite, like negative? Because again, that will reflect on how we communicate with other people. Are there boundaries that we need to set? Sometimes, especially now, the world's a little more crazy, we need to set some boundaries of what we will allow other people to say and how we will allow people to treat us, especially when we're presenting ourselves and our ideas. At the same time, we need to consider that when we give our thoughts and ideas to others, we need to consider, how is this making those people feel? Is this something that pertains to them? So we need to involve them in the decision-making process, or the resolutions that we need to make, ones that will affect just me or them or a whole group of people. So a lot of times people tend to think more of what's in it for me? Well, no, really, what's in it for the other people as well when we're communicating. Now, if we're trying to sell a product or a service, then it is what's in it for me as far as the customer or the client is concerned. Our attention is all turned onto them, not onto us. And so sometimes negative behaviors from others too will cause low self-perception, or, you know, I've seen time and time again, if someone has a low self-confidence, low self-perception, then when they go out, they give off that energy. They make people kind of subconsciously realize, oh, this person doesn't think much about themselves, so why should I? So always think about what kind of energy am I giving off to other people when I'm communicating with them? Is it positive, negative? Is it happy? Is it enthusiastic? Is it angry? What am I getting? Because a lot of times I will even stop and I go, oh my gosh, I feel like I've just given off some negative or some sad energy, because that happens a lot of times when we're going through a lot. And so always think about the energy, literally you can feel it, that you're giving off to whoever it is that you're talking with. And so sometimes too, people can maybe feel like real powerful and confident at home, but kind of weak and ineffective at work. So sometimes too, we're not the same person at work and at home, and we want to be a whole person and consider how we're communicating to all people. You know, as I've said before, that first impression is made in as little as 7 seconds, where we're thinking about our own self-image, our outlook on life, our economic and educational levels, our trustworthiness, our social position, our future success. Within the first 7 seconds, people will actually be judging us on those characteristics. A lot of times they're not even true, they're not right, but it's because of how we look, how we carry ourselves, or something like that. Silently, we haven't even spoken yet, that they will cause, it will cause them to make a particular judgment about us. And so you'll always want to be careful of how you're presenting yourself with your nonverbal signals, because 55% of your communication skills are nonverbal. How you sit, walk, stand, what you're doing with your hands, what you're doing with your facial expressions, your eyes, are you turning away, are you opening yourself up for communication? So 55% is nonverbal. It's powerful. If someone says something, but their body language is saying something completely different, like they're going, oh, it's fine, but yet you see darts in their eyes and they become really stiff or closed off, then you know you have to go back and talk about that, because you can tell that's not how they really feel. 38% is the quality of your voice. That's your expressions, your pitch, and the tone of your voice. So that is more powerful than the 7% of the actual words that are coming out of our mouths. So always think about that. Your nonverbals and the tone of your voice, the expressions, actually have the most power over the message that you're giving to someone else. And a lot of times it can change how we feel or our thoughts just by listening and watching. I tell people in classes a lot of times, you know what, when you're watching TV, for one time, turn the volume off, and for about 5 minutes, just watch the body language and see what kind of impressions you're picking up, because you're not hearing anything, but watch the body languages and notice how that makes you feel as you're watching the shows. Because we feel that energy, we look at the body language, we are very careful about the voice expressions, and then we listen to the words that are actually used. So again, what types of communication or presentation do you see in others? You know, happy, sad, angry, excited, and how does that affect your impression of them? You know, sometimes we could be in a great mood, we go into the office, everything's fine, and then someone comes in and they're very angry, or maybe they're always negative or always nitpicking. What does that do? That immediately puts a wet blanket on you or the group of people, whatever it may be. And so we can do that too. Think about that energy, and if you see that it's kind of down in a room, try to liven it up a little, bring some happiness, some, maybe make people feel valued, say something positive that will help lift people back up as you're communicating. So again, watch people personally and professionally. I say watch, because you will learn so much from things that you're not even reading or that you're hearing, but what you're seeing. And so listen to the voice as well, though. That's extremely important. How do you sound? Is it positive, negative? You know, sometimes when we answer the phone, maybe we've had a bad day, we're tired, we're just so busy, we don't want to answer the phone again. So we come off a little bit rushed, annoyed, irritated, I don't want to be bothered with anybody else. And yet people can't see our face, so they make the entire impression by what they're hearing over the phone. And one time, years ago, when I worked for the Labor Department, and a lady who I taught modeling classes for, she was my mentor. She ripped me apart. She was very ruthless as she was teaching me things. But when she called the Labor Department office and I answered the phone, she said, "My, you sound unprofessional." And at first I thought, well, same to you. And it kind of irritated and offended me. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to swallow my pride and I'm going to pay attention to what she said. And then I noticed, oh my gosh, she is right. I do sound very unprofessional. So I changed my manner of speaking over the phone, especially that initial greeting. And it made all the difference in the world. So listen to yourself even over the phone. Sometimes if we're tired and we just don't want to talk to anybody, we need to actually get up from our desk, maybe walk over to a window, walk around a little bit, even as you're speaking to this person, to get the blood flowing and to feel more live and energetic and more focused on the conversation at hand. So think about that and make sure that your body language, even on the phone, is saying the same thing. Because sometimes if we're all slumped over and we're trying to talk really nice, but our body and our facial expressions are negative, people will sense that over the phone even though they can't actually see you. And so always consider that as well. You know, the voice always will reflect how we're doing. Again, it will reflect how you feel about your company, about your performance, about their performance, about everything that has to do with it, about products and services. You know, sometimes people try to sell a product because they need a job, but they don't really care for the product, and that is reflected on how the person communicates. So think about that. Sometimes we have to just perk up and put a smile on our face and think really positive, strong thoughts before we start presenting to really make our face believable as far as what we're saying. So again, think about how they're feeling. Do they feel important, valued, engaged? Do they have your eye contact, and vice versa? You know, you both want to feel important, engaged, and considered as far as what the needs and the problem maybe is, or just in how you want to communicate and give some positive thoughts to someone that you know needs them. Sometimes we can have a hard deal maybe at work, and maybe the person, or it could be at school, could be family, and there's a lot of maybe angst or lack of energy or frustration. But when you stop to really try to think about why that person is acting that way, a lot of times it's not even meant to be said or done to you. It's just that you're the closest person who is seeing this person deal with something that's very hard. So a lot of times we even have to turn around our communication and go, you know, I think this person is really hurting. And it's a strong person, they're really business focused, but something's going on. I can see the pain in their eyes. And so watch that. Look at people's eyes all the time, because they will say things that maybe the rest of the body and the mouth aren't giving off. But always think about that, because sometimes just changing a little bit of our stance and the tone of our voice can help bring the conversation into something a lot more positive than what we thought before. So always watch those signals. You know, a lot of times when a person is going for a job interview, the interviewer, and I've done this before as you know, in human resources, the interviewer is discerning not only by the tone of the voice and what the person is saying, but how they're fidgeting. I've heard of people who actually, one lady, I guess, was cleaning her ears out while she was interviewing. And there was just all kinds of things that people do. And so I've seen people come into interviews with navel rings on, a woman who had a very important financial job that she was applying for, beautiful navy blue suit, perfectly groomed. Everything about her was just awesome. She had the job skills and the experience, but for some reason, and I think she was in her mid-40s probably, every fingernail was painted a different color. And we said, because you're going to be working in a very powerful, well-known finance company, everything has to be a little bit more neutral. Otherwise, it's distracting if someone is talking to this person, you know, and they're so busy looking at her fingernails, they're not really paying attention to what all is going on in the conversation. And she said, no, that's to express my own individuality. And she gave up the opportunity for a really good job because it wouldn't allow her to express her individuality. So think about that too, you know. Sometimes we just have to give a little bit more than we'd like to be successful. So, you know, people will think, well, this person acts like they could be obnoxious, aggressive, or maybe they're very personable, they're very engaged, very interested. Maybe they're shy and inferior, but their working skills and their experience are so good, we can work around that. We'll build them up a little bit. We'll make them feel like they really are powerful and very much appreciated in the company. So always consider those feelings along with all of the work issues that are involved. to be more confident in your presentations. It's never about trying to close a sale. Sometimes you see salespeople, all they want to do is close a sale, get their commissions, and that's it. And so they hurry through something and they're not really paying attention to the feelings and the emotions, the things that the buyer or the client is dealing with. So we never want to try to meet someone and on that first meeting go, oh, I gotta close this deal. And so we're pressing, because people can tell if you're just selling them something or if you really want to make their life easier. So the purpose of that first meeting is always to open up a lasting relationship. So we're opening up a relationship. We have to get people to trust us first and know we care about them before they are actually, most of the time, going to want to have our product or our service. A lot of times you'll see people go for a higher price because the one who was talking to them was engaged, they were interested, they gave them solutions to the problems they may be having. And so that's more important, to build trust first, and then you can close the sale later after they've learned to trust you and know that you value them. It's all about them, not about you and your experience. So think about that. One of the things that a person could say that would be very positive would be, this process should shave at least an hour off of your information gathering time every day. And I would be very happy to get you started. Okay, so you're giving them the solution and not pressuring them, saying, oh, just today only, you get this 20% off. No, you're saying what it will do, how it will help you, and then that you'd be happy to get them started. That's a very effective way to do business and to get people on your team and to want your products and your services. So they can tell the difference. Whether it's kids, a purchasing agent at a company, an executive, it could be a coach, it could be teachers, school board, whatever it is. So many times just talking isn't going to do the trick. Demonstrations, if at all possible, especially for those of us who learn and do things more by seeing them. Demonstrations, if you can demonstrate a product, a service, something like that, that really helps. Demonstrate to kids how to do a particular task or duty, or increase their talent in an instrument, whatever. Demonstrations help so many times. Could be, in the military, they demonstrate. In law enforcement, they demonstrate, how do you use this? How do you do that? And so always want to be kind of a teacher or instructor and demonstrating something that would be useful to someone. And so that's very important. Sometimes audience participation, you might see people are getting a little tired. They're like looking a little bit confused. What do I do here? Well, sometimes get an audience to participate. Maybe say, okay, what are some questions you have about this particular topic? Just throw out a few questions to me. And so people can throw out questions. It'll get the audience motivated again. It will get them feeling like they are part of the issue, part of the solution. And so a lot of times just getting audience participation in some way by recommending their own thoughts, their own ideas, or even their own frustrations can really help to get a more positive response out of them. True stories that give credibility are very important. I would much rather often hear about something maybe terrible that someone went through and then how they got to the other side of it than I would someone who definitely it's important to have the knowledge and the education, but they don't understand the reality of it all. I remember a friend who had a very, that was her full-time job, was doing marriage counseling in a particular type of organization. I won't talk about that. But she didn't understand because she'd never been married, and yet she was doing all this counseling. And then she got married at about 40 years old, I think. She was, older. And then it hit. Okay, then the lights went on. Then she understood, hey, this is real life. Now I'm in it. Now I'm experiencing this. Okay, now I understand what they were going through and how they had to get beyond it. And so think about that too, as far as any ways to put yourself into the other person's shoes. I think that is so important. I try as much as I can as an empath to put myself into other people's shoes and think, oh gosh, well yeah, I guess if I was in their shoes, I'd feel the same way. Because if you can show empathy and you can show understanding, a lot of times you can get somebody to cooperate, to agree, to want your service, to want your product. because they know you understand because you've been there and you've done that. So think of true stories as well for credibility, being as informative as possible, seeing if they need any more information, if they need anything else to help them make a decision, to understand, help them relate in whatever way possible by including all of those things. You know, a lot of times with case studies, they could be legal, they could be financial case studies on things to do with children and maybe what's happened in the home. When you provide case studies, true stories of what's happened to other people, so many times then that is really going to help them go, oh, well, it happened to them and they got through it and they're on the other side of it. So yes, thank you. Now I do have hope and I do have some direction and some of the steps that I need to do to get over to the other side, just like they took. And so always think about that and how audience relates. Connecting your minds with the audience, ensure it's relevant information. Sometimes people get the audience, so to speak, even if it's one person or 1,000 people, and so they start interjecting, whoa, it's all about me, this is what I did, and that's what I did, and blah, 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 and it's like, no. You want to make sure that whatever you say to one person or 1,000 is actually applicable to the topic at hand, because a lot of times people kind of get a little off on a tangent about themselves, and that's one of the first things that can turn an audience or a person off, is to do that, because it's all about them, and we don't want to do that. Distracting mannerisms too, whether it's ahs, fidgeting, all kinds of things like that. Sometimes we just need to cup one hand in the other and set that on one of our legs and leave it there, to have confidence and to have control of our hands. Don't put your hands in the middle of your lap, because sometimes people just kind of sprawl all over. Cup your hands, set them on one leg, and leave them there. You have control, then you can't start fidgeting and doing things. Think of properly designed graphics. They're also very, very helpful, as long as they also are connected to you, your nonverbals, as well as what you're saying. So always pay attention to, if things are rough and people are going through a lot, maybe there's a lot of overtime, maybe there's layoffs in a company or whatever, or maybe you're just talking about how to make insurance claims and deal with people in the insurance industry. Whatever it is, if you're talking to people, they're hungry, they're tired, they're thirsty, they've been sitting for too long listening, watch them, because if they're getting too restless and, kind of fidgeting around in their seats, it might be time to go and say, you know what, we're going to take a break 15 minutes early. So go ahead and, use the restroom, have refreshments, and we'll see you back in 15. That way they're waking up and they know that you care enough about what they're dealing with physically. Because there's an old saying about the mind can only absorb what the seat can tolerate, and that is very true. So if you're speaking to people from more than one kind of group or education level, you have to think of ways to not entertain really, but engage them all. I remember when I spoke at a community college, and it was on communication skills and professional image, but it was everyone from the janitorial staff to the president and the executive board of the college, and I'm going, oh my gosh, how am I going to, the difference is there. So you think of ways that you can modify your presentation to meet all levels of people, and educational levels, I should say, that you're talking to about. So always think about the emotion, the underlying triggers. Sometimes we can be talking to someone and something that's said as a trigger. It triggers either a good memory or a bad memory of something that happened to them. So when you're talking to people and you see them stiffen up or look sad or look happy or whatever, especially if they look concerned, they look upset, they look like maybe you hit a trigger and it hit a nerve, that it could be a really strong, powerful person, but all of a sudden you see like sadness in their eyes, even though their body's like this. Then stop and think about that and make adjustments to your talk. Watch your people, watch how they're responding at all times, because a lot of times we'll have to make a little bit of an adjustment here or there in order to really get them back on board, back listening again, instead of putting a wall up there and going, nope, not listening to that anymore. So always watch. Anyway, then communication skills that make you break you. Create a positive example at all times in your strength and your energy. Audience engagement, establish a nonverbal, again, body signals when you're talking to anyone or a group of people. If they look like they're going to be tough and obnoxious, you may have to kind of straighten up and do the body steepling position with your hands like this, in front of you, to put up a barrier, and also to give you more presence, more power, more presence. If you see that maybe it's an audience or a person who needs some warm fuzzies, because they've been through a lot, then kind of give them that impression, that energy, that feeling when you start the program or start your message. The most important point first is very important to catch a person's audience. Like, you could start your presentation by saying, by age 16, I'd been kicked out of every high school in the city. And I had to go live with my uncle in Florida to finish high school. Now, I actually did know a guy, only he was 17, but somebody else apparently had done this, and that did happen to him. So open up with something that's really going to catch their attention so they want to listen to you. And then you can, after you have finished, giving them all the story, giving them all the things that happened, all the things that turned your life around, then you close it by circling back to the beginning. And you could say something like, yes, I'm the one who got kicked out of every high school by the time I was 16 years old. But now I'm proud to say I have a master's degree, and I'm working with young people, providing the programs and the inspiration that they need to go forward in their lives. Think about something like that. And then just connect all of those emotions. So always think about that and what you're doing with all of your body signals and how to read people, read those silent signals. Always watch your own expression, your facial expressions, the energy that you're giving out, the body signals that you're giving out to other people. What are they doing? Always think about that. Sometimes I have to stop and switch because I realize what's going on. And then always do that before you start a conversation. And that will really help you in communicating and giving off the kind of signals, the kind of positivity, the kind of strength, the kind of knowledge that you have, and in return, getting the same thing from those that you're talking to. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again.